but Steve Hartman set up a Kindness 101 group where he has a 600-row spreadsheet of all his segments.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah.
I was just say my wife shows the Steve Hartman segment every week in her class. So they, to kind of get the kids talking and going for talking about kindness
Yep.
and all that stuff. And actually have written to them about a local man, Emil Etheridge is his name, who he's self-published about 5 books. He does supplemental schoolwork for the local districts in Fayette County and whatnot. And he has a wife he's been taking care of since in her 30s, had a stroke and became immobile and so forth. And, as a kid who was shot when he was young, came from the projects, was considered special education, became a teacher and all this other stuff. So I was hoping to get him maybe on Steve Hartman one day, but we'll see what happens.
I know his producer, not a lot. Like she runs the group, and we've gone back and forth about that spreadsheet. So
that's cool.
She doesn't like me. don't ask for recommendation. All right, cool. Well, I'll let you go.
Yeah, so sure. So I was obviously for myself. My wife is a teacher. Stacey Brandt that's on is running for school board, and she's actually a substitute teacher at the Uniontown Area School District. My wife has taught for about 24 years, and my stepmom, my sister-in-law, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law are all teachers, as well as some cousins and so forth. So a lot of times I get asked, "Are you a teacher?" Because I know so much about the actual ins and outs of what goes on and how funding works and how contracts and unions and everything else. So I thought, with the current state of education and what happened with the cuts or what we think may happen, it'd be a good thing to talk about because in our area, especially in District 14, we are a poor area of Pennsylvania, especially, I would say probably Fayette's probably the poorest right now, one of the poorest in the state. I want to say number 2 poorest and number 4 for Medicare or Medicaid. So I figured, well, why not talk about this at this point in time because it affects so many. So I think first of all is Title I is what we talk about the most when we talk about, money coming in from the Department of Education. So really the question is, what is Title I funding? First of all, it's federally funded, 100%. It does not dictate curriculum. You'll have a lot of people out there talking about, we don't want the federal government telling our state what to do. That seems to be the topic now, right? Give everything back to the states. Let's not worry about doing anything from the federal level, but that curriculum is being set by the state already. There's nothing about this that dictates what you have to teach. So what does it do? Well, one, it provides additional resources, right, beyond the regular budget. So we can offer extra programs and extra support, whether it be after school programs, summer programs, whether it be aides to have one-on-one or tutoring to have for those who are falling behind. So you have that extra staff that's needed to help the kids who maybe are considered homeless or, fall between the lower poverty line, do not have the ability to go to a, pre-K, preschool. When they come in, they're not ready compared to the other kids. So that's what that helps with, that funding specifically, right? So what do we want to do? We want to meet the state and requirements. Right now, the PSSAs are going on for the whole state right now. My wife is teaching the 8th grade since she's 7th grade. You can't teach them the same grade for the PSSAs, right? So we want to make sure we're hitting performance standards of reading, language arts, and mathematics. I think the level that's expected of Uniontown was around 40% to be at their level based on socioeconomic standards. Right now, they're 51%, so they're doing 11% better. So this does work from a standpoint of adding more, value prospects like extra staff and supplemental instruction. So obviously, like I said before, it reinforces that regular school curriculum year round by having the summer programs or tutoring afterwards in those after school programs. So how much is out there for our area? For District 14, we have 57 school districts. So that was a pain to go through and make sure that they were all the right ones. There's no area out there that I can just go and say, give me PA District 14 and all their school districts. So what I had to do was go look at the IU map and then look at the congressional map that Russian Thaler has, and then go to each district and type in on the Congress page to say, oh, is he the person that fits that school district or not? So total, there's 57 in this district. And the amount of money that would be lost is $37,207,106, which is quite the windfall compared to what we would have. Overall, Pennsylvania is around 700 million, less than a lot of other areas, actually. So we're doing pretty well. And even with the budget that was proposed recently by our governor, it still wouldn't be enough, nearly enough to make up for the whole state to lose that money. And a lot of that already we're seeing shortfalls at school. I know for my wife, and I'm sure for others, they get about $110 to use for any supplies throughout the whole year. So that's whether it be paper, pencils, composition notebooks, folders, whatever it may be. So a lot of that already comes out of the teacher's pocket. So then take money away for these kids, they won't have that extra, help, and it's really going to set them back. So what happened, right? So obviously teacher furloughs, that's already happening. I know in our district, they're talking about 20 furloughs right now, and that's based on misappropriation of funds from COVID or expecting there still to be money and there wasn't. And then also with shutting down one of the schools and consolidating and then fixing up a school to fit that consolidation. They're still not sure how much money that'll be yet. So we're still looking at that. So this might happen or it might be more, actually. So in total, that'd be 180,000 teaching positions, right? From a standpoint of like state, federal wide with that money going out, not just for us, but it would affect 2.8 million students in low income communities, right? Special education services carry more than 7.5 million students with disabilities. So reading and math specialists will be able to provide supplemental work for struggling children. So, would they be able to get pulled out of class or have extra time, whether it be before school, after school, or in the summer programs? Probably not. Right? The students with disabilities will lose one-to-one interaction, instruction, possibly. Especially when you think about, certain areas, you have some kids who aren't included, they're more of your life skills kids. That's different. But for that inclusion, when you have team teaching, that team teacher might not be able to be in that room and help out. And then that falls onto the regular educator who may not be well versed in special education or certain things that may be. And it can also fall into having issues with IEPs. Would we be able to follow those IEPs? Would they be, created even based on the ability to do that and the amount of money to help to fill that instructor time? And then English as second language students wouldn't have access to special language classes to actually learn English. It'd be kind of be thrown in, and you would have to then obviously learn your own as a kid. And as a teacher, you have to learn how to talk to them and communicate with them. So I know even with things that are going now, Uniontown hasn't been, a huge boon for bringing people in who have English as second language. But since the Marcellus Shell work has happened around here, we have seen more people come in, and people from Fiji, people from Vietnam, a lot of Puerto Rican or Mexican immigrants have come in. Sometimes the teachers are told about it. Sometimes they aren't. It slips through the cracks because there's only one person really running that for the whole district. I'm using my district for, reference. But a lot of times, Google Translate, or my wife, she had, 5 years of Spanish in school. She's able to communicate a little bit, or maybe to talk to Spanish teachers, a friend, and kind of get some information. How can I communicate better? But they would have to kind of be thrown into that mix and learn without that extra help, which would definitely not be beneficial to their education. So committed teachers, we need to pay out of pocket for supplies, right? That's already happening, but it would be worse. After school and summer programs would be cut. So vulnerable children right off the bat would be more likely to start from behind, right? And pre-K counts funding would be cut. And they're talking about, in general, Head Start, getting rid of that. But what is happening is that the families are able to get childcare, be able to get their kids to actually learn in preschool and be ready for kindergarten, first grade, And not only that, it allows their parents to excel, right, and succeed in the workforce. Because if they don't have childcare and they can't pay out of pocket for childcare, then maybe they can't work. So therefore, they can't move ahead. They fall behind, and so do their kids, which then adds, of course, undue stress to the family because maybe they can't pay for something. Maybe their kid can't go to pre-K. Maybe they can't move forward in their job, depending on what it is. So where are we going to lead to, right? We already have large classroom sizes, but they would be larger, obviously. And, right now, depending on the situation, you might have 30 is usually a good cutoff for probably teachers, is where you would see. But, a lot of basically contracts do not have class size. So they could give you as much as they need. Hey, sorry, we're not going to hire any more teachers. We don't have the money because, we lost these jobs already. You have to deal with 40 kids in your class. And I think we all know the larger the class size, the less the kids learn from it, because you can't have that one-on-one attention, especially if it's someone who's fallen behind. So you have the people who fall behind and you might spend more time with them. But in turn, what would happen is those who maybe are excelling would either get bored or fall behind, or, not be able to go forward as fast as they want because they can't have that extra work given to them unless they're in gifted class, right? So there's a lot of things can happen. Obviously, you're going to have lower test scores. So everything's based on test scores now, right? Ever since No Child Left Behind. So we're looking to hit this number all the time, for proficiency. So obviously, if you can't spend as much time teaching, you're not going to get test scores that are, nearly high enough to show proficiency throughout the whole class. So we're kind of defeating of what we were trying to do in the first place with this Title I money, right? How do you pay for this, windfall of money? Well, the next thing you're going to have happen is that you're going to have higher property and state taxes. I know in Fayette County, they raised taxes 28%. And it was definitely a very argumentative point at about maybe 2 commissioner meetings ago, which makes sense. Nobody wants to pay more taxes, especially if it seems like it's not being used for something that's worthwhile. And obviously, school taxes are already high, at least in people's minds. And then to raise them more because of that would only, cause more conflict within the community. And then possible school closures and consolidations. I know you look at some places, they have county schools. If you go into Maryland, in Pennsylvania, we do not have that, but there are areas that kind of combine. I know we have a lot of small schools. I know when I graduated, I think my graduating class was around 300. My daughter is actually going to graduate, my firstborn, this year, and I want to say their class is around 175. So there's almost a, 80% decline in where it was when I was there. Well, not 80%, about 40%. Sorry, doubled that. It's about 40% decline. So it's quite a bit of a difference than what it was before. And then possible privatization, right? That's what we always talk about. And what would happen then is school vouchers and school choice. And I could talk probably an hour just on that. But what you end up happening is that, right? I work as a software developer, so it's a lot easier to say, hey, we need more manpower on this. We're going to take someone or a contractor and bring them in, and we're going to throw them in. They're going to start working on this. They know maybe the product, maybe they know the language that we use. It's not that hard to ramp them up and get them started. But if we're privatizing schools, whether it be private, charter, or let's say Christian, which is still obviously a private school, they don't have rules to follow to a standpoint of like, you have to accept this many kids, you have to accept more, so they can cut it off, right? And let's be honest, I mean, you could say it's merit-based maybe, right? But the whole idea of school choice is that I want to send my underprivileged kid, is the idea, to this better opportunity of the school. So what we end up seeing is that a lot of times in different places, I know in Arizona, they said, okay, we're going to give you like a $12,000 voucher. And that school's $12,000 before now raised their tuition to $16,000. So you weren't able to just take that voucher and automatically go from your public school to that private school. You had to pay extra again because they were able to raise their prices to make more money and to use that voucher as more of a coupon than actually a use for that. In Idaho, recently they created this $50 million voucher program, and all of a sudden this $30 million program for equipment, whether it be laptops, iPads, modems for those that are in a rural area, $30 million of it just gone. Now those kids don't have that. So they say it's not because of that, but the correlation is there, and the causation. So what you see is that you don't fund the public schools. They don't do as well because they aren't as funded. And then the kids that get to move away probably, or get away from there, probably aren't the ones that you would want to hopefully improve their lives, right? Especially if it's further away, then there's no way to get them there unless that person drives. And it might be a family that has to take the bus, local bus to get to their work. They don't have a car. So how do you get that kid there? So they're kind of stuck at that public education level that is deteriorating because we're not feeding into it the funds needed to make it the school that it could be. So on paper, a lot of things look good. And the idea that this would work, I understand. But from a standpoint of what vouchers normally do and what choice does, is it hurts the marginalized and helps those who want to move into the private area that already maybe are sending their kids there or had wanted to, and just didn't take that plunge. Now they have that free money to send, which takes away from the public education. I think private schools and Christian schools and any other religious schools is perfectly fine. Montessori schools, maybe there's something the Jewish community, whatever it may be, that's fine. Pay your way into it. You can do it, but you're given this opportunity for everybody to learn on equal footing with the public education system. So how can you get involved? There's a couple different ways. I know I'm involved. Issue Voter is probably my favorite app. I have it for my iPhone device and for my MacBook and my iPad. I'm a Apple guy. This one may not be on Google, but basically you get to vote on the bills that are in the House and then in the Senate, and that information gets sent to your congressman. That doesn't mean they're going to listen. But if I go and look right now, considering we're District 14 we're talking about, I will look how my scorecard is with Guy Reschenthaler. So I agree with him 11% of the time. So 11% of the time, he and I see eye to eye. So obviously, from a standpoint of my representation, I'm not seeing much of it with the way I feel about things and how things should be done. Then I also have John Fetterman at 64% agreed, and then David McCormick at 9% agreed. Now, if they don't vote, then I wouldn't know. It wouldn't come into that calculation of a scorecard. But there you go. That's a good way to at least get that information out there. You can say you oppose or you're for. You can even add some information if you want to, and they'll at least get that. Issue Voter does send it over to them, or at least their team, so they know how you are voting or want them to vote from a representation standpoint. The next one is 5 calls, which basically lets you know who are your congressmen. How can you get a hold of them? How can you call them, email them, whatever it may be. So that way you can reach out and kind of send out information to them, try to get them on the phone or at least their staff. And then for a while there, a lot of people were complaining that Fetterman's line, either no one was picking up, it was busy all the time, they can leave a message because the mailbox was full, whatever it may be, or no one pick up in general. But that seems to have changed, including Dave McCormick. So I think if you really wanted to reach out, you could through 5 calls. And then there's 2 other ones, ActiVote, which was fairly new to me. But with this one, you're able to actually see who's on the ballot for the upcoming elections. And if they're Democrat, Republican, where you kind of see actually on the map how they fall in line with the way you feel and what you would want them to vote for. So that's a good way to see who you should vote for. And then the last one is Pocket Congress. This is actually made, Congress has basically like almost like a hacker week or hacker month where you can actually, younger kids, whether they're in high school, I think even college, can go ahead and create apps, and then they kind of win awards, right? And it's a good way to get them involved in public service and maybe bring them, well, not now probably, but before, into the federal workforce or state workforce. So one of these ones that were made was Pocket Congress, which is very similar to Issue Voter, but I wanted to put it up there just because it's free as well. And I believe it's cross-platform, and it was written by a high schooler actually at the time. And it was pretty impressive And being a software developer, I thought it was interesting that he came up with this and what he did. So right now, that's going to end with the actual slides. Since I have you guys off mute, if you want to, we could talk about it, kind of, brainstorm, is there anything we can do from a standpoint of, talking to our congressman about public education, getting involved with the PSEA, since that is our unionized version of the workforce, and who maybe we can reach out to get out there. Obviously, there's been a lot of 50-51 protests, local and nationwide. I think hopefully at least Congress might work on education, but it's hard to say what's going to happen. And you want to keep an eye too on your local congressman. When I'm talking about for myself, that would be Charity Grim Krupa and Pat Stefano in our areas. So, you want to look that up too for yourself, because I know that we have had a few things come up with school choice. And I know Representative Grim Krupa has said that she was for it or wants that. So I find it a little concerning considering the low socioeconomic area that we see in this realm for the state legislature. So could you probably some of the changes coming up and appreciate this? Yes, Stacy, I'll get it out there. I'll save what we talked about and just kind of the breakdown of this, and I will post it on my page, and then I can put on Reddit. I've put stuff on the Pennsylvania Reddit. I don't think there's a District 14 Reddit. I could be wrong, but I will get you the link. That way you can post it wherever you like to. And Robert, is there anything that you want to add to this? I know you said your wife is a teacher, so I'm sure you're probably entrenched like I am in this. I know if you're in the Pittsburgh area and it's Pittsburgh Public School your wife works for, then I know there's a lot of closures and a lot of issues to live like North Hills, Road area that have a lot of issues with bus drivers as well, not showing up.
Yeah, so they are a fairly aggressive union. Historically, they've striked a number of times. The last decade has had less labor unrest. They are suburban. They have some of the best contracts in the area because of their willingness to hang tough. And I think they're putting in a new building, which we're trying to avoid. Right, they're closing the local schools down. They did that during COVID. They didn't tell us the bus rides would be longer. I'm still upset about that. You'd think he'd ask if people want to be on the bus longer, but they all know the answer. So they just don't ask the question, right?
Yeah.
I love that one. From the point of view we look at it as a state and local issue, the federal government is, as you pointed out, a gravy provider. The department actually is more focused on college student loans than anything else.
Yes.
And that will change if the current administration has its way. So they want to decentralize education so they can pick off state by state the ability to privatize and otherwise fund people's private choices rather than have a public education system, because they weren't succeeding on a federal level. They're going to try on a state level, and that's exactly what they're doing. And we have, as I said, we have 16 months to vote, and I wouldn't bother voting. I mean, I'll do something about Russian dollar, but it won't be serious. It'll just be what we should be doing, and not going crazy. And look at those 30 flippable districts and flip them, because this is nonsense. Yeah. This is so painful, and the noise is so. I mean, this is great background. I loved your presentation. I thought it was effective. It just politically is pretty. It is what's needed, but it needs to get the right people in front of it on a regular basis.
Yes.
Because there's so much noise out there. So, anything I can do to push out your messaging, push out that you're doing this work would be what I want. I have, as you pointed out, an interest in the work because, the family. So I'll definitely try to contribute what little I can. But, I'm always there to try to help out and try. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I think probably topics. I'd like to maybe have an area, and maybe it's that 14th district Facebook page, or maybe it's something else. Like Stacy mentioned, maybe I should make a Reddit 14th district PA 14th district page, and then something where we can talk about like what is the most concerning for us, right? And it's probably going to be Democrats. I mean, obviously Republicans are welcome, but I'm thinking for these town halls, there are some, depending if it's like you see with veterans and Social Security, you see a lot of people speaking up and coming out in droves whenever there are town halls in these areas where people will actually show up and hold them. A lot of concern. And I always say to myself too, and I don't know the answer because I haven't decided to dive into this, but even Medicare from a standpoint of how you have to have supplemental and everything. And, my grandmother's 97, still very healthy, thank God. And only has Social Security to live off of. But it's interesting that eye care and dental care is not part of Medicare really, unless you buy that supplemental or work through the dentistry, when there's so much tied to quality of life, especially with dental hygiene, that it just kind of stymies me that we wouldn't have that covered in Medicare. And why is that? You know what I mean? So I think there's a lot to, still a lot in the bone that we could chew on and kind of work through and talk with. But I guess the question is, especially in District 14, who are the players that need to be involved and maybe be involved with this eventually? And like you said before, how can we kind of tie everybody together and have some kind of aggregation of stuff that's going on so we can kind of feed off each other and help each other instead of being in our separate silos? So, yeah. But I think what I'm planning on doing is probably at least having these monthly. I'd like to get information out, more often. Maybe do that in the Facebook page, but I'll do them more often if people want to. I probably would stop at bi-weekly. I think weekly would just be too much information. And trying to find people to speak on that information, subject matter expert, would be a little bit harder. So I'll probably, at most bi-weekly, but for sure monthly. So sometime in May, I'll figure out a time period at least. And I'll probably reach out to the people who weren't able to come today, send them a link to let them know they can watch the recording, and then see if they have any ideas of things they find pertinent to talk about as the next, topic for us. Any other questions?
I think we're good.
Okay. Well, then I will get this saved. I will put it up where I need to, and then I will get it out to you, Robert, and you can maybe pistol in that PA-14, and then Stacy, you and I can talk and see about if there's nothing for Reddit, you and I making something, or myself, and then putting it there. So I will do that. I appreciate you guys for coming on. It's a start, and we can go from there.
Couple of questions about how you distribute this. The biggest problem with Facebook group is it's not really linkable.
Okay.
So if you have resources that have an ability to have them linked, if I can share them to you, you can review them and then put them up there. That would be wonderful. It's a real problem when I have like a spreadsheet and it's like it's in the feed for a week and then no one can ever find it again unless I post it again, right? And whereas I think you might have more structure where you're thinking of putting stuff. So
sounds good. That works for me.
And I'll send you those two silly links that I talked about.
Sounds good. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Just for fun. So thanks again.
Okay, guys. Have a great day.
You too. Yep. Bye-bye.
Talk to you soon.